Hello and welcome back to TNN's coverage of the world's 9 best fantasy football players league. I'm Danny Football, filling in for your host who's out on holiday. And this is what we have for you this week. And now, with an independent statistical analysis of the season, we send it out to Joe.
What's up, World's 9? This is Facci Figures coming at you with some fresh data from the 2023 regular season. I know there's been a lot of talk about sacks and how overloaded they are. So much so that the league even voted to nerf them at the beginning of this season. Well, I'm here to hit you with the real deal. This is the 2023 sack chart. I went through the season, all of the matchups, and calculated all of the sacks that were recorded in the regular season of the 2023 NFL football bonanza. Here we go. This is it. Pause this if you want to track your own team, but we've got all of our league members plotted on the x-axis. We have our weekly matchups, and on the y-axis, quantity of sacks. You could see here, Khalil Mack's insane week 4 performance against the Raiders. That's locked Brett up for the sack record on the season. Notably, I'd like to point out Joe's JK were still Mahorny in this gray line here, consistently at the top of the pack. And you'll see in a later slide that he has been the number 1 sack performer throughout the season. With a quick trend line, we hover between 1 and 3 sacks on average all season long. We've really only broken that once or twice when we had an abnormally large amount of sacks in week 11 and an abnormally low amount of sacks in week 7. So what does all this mean? If you go through and count up all the sacks and then include the sacks as an impact stat against your matchups, you can find, and I'll share this data with anyone, if anyone's interested, that you have a 52.4% chance to win your weekly matchup with less sacks than your opponent. Let that sink in. This insane play that can totally change momentum and the tide of a football game is abnormally hard to get, effectively does not matter in the fantasy football weekly matchup. Now, if you eliminate the sack leader of the week, the person with the most sacks, take out the outlier, you have a 62.4% chance to win your matchup with less sacks. This is the beginning of my argument to unnerf sacks next season. What I have to do now is go back and do this same analysis on our previous 3 seasons to figure out if this data still holds. And if it does, Nooch, I'm sorry. I think I've just convinced everyone that the sack needs to be unnerfed. I mean, just look at the Mahorny squad. 57.5 sacks on the season with a record of 6-8. That's almost, it's 15 more than 15 more than the Bandits in second place, who are almost 10 more than Blood, Sweat, and Beers in third place. I have 20 more sacks. I'm sorry. Facci Figures does not have a football team. Joe has 20 more sacks than Blood, Sweat, and Beers in third place. And BSB also has a losing record. The Brick Walls in fourth, 50-50. Then you start to get to the league powerhouse teams this year. They are the middle of the pack. And obviously, everybody else, the bottom feeders with very few sacks, also aren't holding up against the league. In closing, our sacks should be worth more. And I don't know who else to tell you that than this great chart of the league average with TJ and Trayvon Walker, the middest player to ever play defensive football. Thank you. I rest my case.
And now, here's Danny Football, myself, with his picks for the first week of the playoffs, week 15. Hey, what's up, guys? World's 9 best fantasy football players expert, Danny Football here, back with another week of expert predictions. Last week was all right for me, going 3-3, bringing my total on the year up to a very nice 51-27. My guest, Nooch, had a terrible week, going 1-5. Presumably just completely thrown off from losing the different games. Not good enough to beat the expert. But now, it's a new week. It's the playoffs, so I'm inviting back a couple of guests who are able to have a lucky week and get the best of me this regular season. So there's a new week, new guest, a new chance to beat the expert, or a chance for the expert to redeem himself. Guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
How we doing, everyone? Mike Viscani here, proud owner of playoff team Ham and Throw. 2 years in a row that I'm here in the playoffs. Just like Ham and Throw, I just consistently prove Danny football wrong. And I'm here for another week, ready to do it again.
I would like to point out that Hammond Throw was the second worst team in the league last year. So just, something to keep in mind, not proving Danny football wrong too often.
Yeah, we're talking about this year, though. We're focused on this year and our bright future.
All right, first up, we have Team Big Chungus 22 taking on undefeated, never lost. Big Chungus currently favored in this one at 59%. We're filming on a Friday since there was the potential for major shakeups in the playoff matchups due to some stat corrections that actually never came, never changed anything. So for the first time ever on TNN, we will have some games played before the picks, a little bit of information. Who knows, may influence, and not the expert's opinion, but the guests might buy into stuff like that. For Big Chungus, obviously majorly disappointing for them to be in the losers bracket. They went all in at the trade deadline, made a lot of big moves, and they came up just short down the stretch. Austin Eckler, huge disappointment. The man has looked like an absolute bum lately, and Will paid a pretty hefty price for him, giving up what eventually turned out to be the second overall pick in the draft. I think the talent is there for this team, Big Chungus 22, at least this year. I worry about some of their guys aging, what they're going to look like in the future without those picks, but it's a team I'm not too worried about being in the actual toilet bowl itself. For undefeated, never lost, back in the losers bracket again. Fun fact for these two teams, they are actually the only two teams to have never made the playoffs in league history. Only two. Everyone else has made it at least once, except for Big Chungus and undefeated, never lost. I'm actually very intrigued by this undefeated, never lost team. I feel like we've kind of been waiting on them to break out for just years now, and maybe they finally have that young core. They've got the third pick in next year's draft, assuming that they do not try to trade it away. Unfortunately, I think Big Chungus, their deadline moves, the talent they've got is going to make them a tough team in this losers bracket. And I'm going to go with the talent, riding with Team Big Chungus 22 in this one.
Yeah, I think you make some good points there. And honestly, I think I'm glad you started this game because I got some things to say about the Chungai. That it hurt me. As
Yeah.
a Chungai fan, I think I kind of right away didn't like it. I think I liked the idea that he wanted to go for some moves. I think
He's got Tyreek.
Kamara
Yeah, you gotta
and
shove
Evans,
sometimes.
I think those two guys were big pickups, but the Eckler trade was that was the killer. I think
Yeah.
if he did everything else besides that and still missed the playoffs, like you can be like, you know what? Okay, still has a second pick. Didn't go well, but maybe make a good pick out of that, go forward, feeling confident. But that pick alone, I think, or that trade alone, I think really tanked the franchise. And, I hope we're not too far away from seeing the Chung guy make a playoff run in the future, but it's hard to be optimistic after what you've seen. And, I tried to talk the Chung guy out of it, back when we were fighting for the playoff spot, but he went against what I said and probably regretting it. And so, Will, I'm sorry. I tried to tell you otherwise, but,
Will, if you're
you
watching,
know,
comment
if
down
you're
below.
watching, yes, comment, like, subscribe. Yeah. So not ideal, but yeah. So UNL, he's he's rising. He's rising. I think he's definitely put up a more respectable team this
Mhm.
year than in the past. I think everyone's kind of expecting him to make the jump sooner or later, with all those picks hopefully finally working out, but maybe it hasn't worked out as much as he hoped by this time. But, I still think they're on the rise. Maybe next year is their chance to make the playoffs. I didn't know these are the only two teams left to not have made the playoffs, so it's
Yeah.
kind of sad to see them in this matchup. But I do have a little grudge against Miguel just because I feel like he inflated his max points. And as the holder of his first and second round pick, that kind of hurt me a little bit.
He was
I was
smart.
hoping for a
He
top
beat Joe on the max points by I think like 2 points.
two
So
points. And I was rooting against Joe last week because I needed to make sure he didn't go off. And I guess I should have been rooting for him a little bit more because, that hurt my first and second round picks. So, oh well, it is what it is. I still feel good about my draft capital. But yeah, we'll see about Miguel's team. But I think in this one, Big Chungus made all those moves just to make sure he didn't lose the toilet bowl, I guess, at this point. So we'll go with the Chung guy.
all right, next up, we're going to stick with the losers bracket. We have Slob taking on JK. Slob favored in this one at 54%. Who do you like in this matchup?
So this is also an intriguing matchup as far as teams that were out of it, but then not out of it
Yeah.
and almost made it, but then didn't make it. I think looking forward with these two teams, I think Nooch did some good jobs at the trade deadline, kind of shoving away guys that were really deteriorating, and especially, getting the stuff from Will that he did. I think you can look at his team, and after he went on the run last year, trading away and then not making the playoffs, which by this time, I think we should look at as a league of what happens when you go all in and you just simply don't even make the playoffs. Um, I don't know,
I mean,
food for
look,
thought.
Nooch has done a decent job of turning it around. He could have
He
made it
has,
this
he
year.
has.
He got some good draft capital back. So
Yeah, and I think maybe the Chung guy will have an opportunity next year to try to get rid of all these guys that they got and maybe salvage something, which might just be the best way forward. But no longer about the Chung guy. We passed that. Yeah, Slob. So believe it or not, if you look back at week one, when everyone was trashing my team, said I was gonna be the worst team in the league, and then I squeaked out a win at the last second to win by one against Nooch. And I was like, perfect, get a win on the board. We'll see what happens. If you look back at that game, if Nooch won that game, he would be in the playoffs over
that
me
makes the
right now.
difference. Yeah.
That made the difference, that week one slippery victory. So, Nooch's team, he sold, but he still actually played, pretty well. He's probably happy with his draft capital, looking good. Mahorny, he just wasn't good enough. He got really cocky at the end. He was confident. People were scared of him. And then, everyone was like, oh, Hammond Throw's not going to put up a big week. He's deteriorating. He's going down. But nope, Hammond Throw puts up the second highest points, challenges Mahorny to score 250. Couldn't even do it. Couldn't do it. So he didn't deserve to be there. But yeah, as far as this matchup, I think both teams kind of sneaky hot towards the end of the year.
Mhm.
But I'm going to go with Slob here. I don't even know which one I picked before. I'm going to go with Slob. I think Mahorny's luck ran out and they're deteriorating. They're going down and maybe even spiraling.
Yeah, I like that pick. This was obviously two very disappointing seasons for these teams. Nooch has now just narrowly missed the playoffs 2 years in a row, which is just like the worst spot to possibly be in. I know they had some expectations coming into this year. They made a couple trades early on, and then closer to the deadline selling. I don't love all of the moves that they made with their selling. Quentin Johnston obviously looks like garbage, and personally, as an expert, I'm not sold on Jonathan Mingo, but he got two young guys. He's got some draft picks coming in this upcoming draft. I think that'll definitely help him out. JK also narrowly missed the playoffs, but they did do a very nice job of tearing Team Big Chungus 22 down with them. The win they picked up there in the overtime was just perfection. Kept Will out of the playoffs, ended up keeping JK out of the playoffs. Just fantastic. Could not write it any better. Hugely hilarious. I've been saying all year that Joe's team, they've got the talent, just for some reason they do not click. I know they've been the sack leader with especially like Daniil, great for this team. I know that the teams in the losers bracket are here for a reason, but I'm still going to go with the lesson I said before, pick the talent, and I'm going to go with the more talented team JK in this matchup. All right, moving on over to the actual playoffs. We have Ham and Throw taking on the Judon Noodles. Noodles favorite at 57% here. I think personally this is the worst of the two playoff matchups, but it is the playoffs and you never know what's going to happen. Ham and Throw made what I thought was a very confusing deadline move to go and get extremely mid aging Calvin Ridley. Like, if you're going to go and make a move, you should actually buy and not do this weird, like, sitting on the fence, kind of buying, but not too aggressively. I'm going to add a piece that's like maybe a wide receiver 3. I don't know. Very, very bizarre. Luckily for them, though, they are going up against the Judon Noodles, who are known for choking, and they're already starting to show their true colors this season. Most around the league, I think league consensus was that the Judon Noodles would probably be having one of the first round buys in the playoffs, and they lost out to an aging SWAT team and a team M. Vanek that was literally the worst team in league history just 1 year ago. The team is going to be without Pacheco this week, which is obviously a huge downgrade for them that could give Ham and Throw exactly the window that they need in this matchup. That is, of course, if Ham and Throw was not absolute garbage. I still hate Ham and Throw. I've been screaming it from the rafters all year. Terrible, terrible team. I cannot wait to watch them get 5th place after being bounced in the first round of the playoffs, even against the choking Noodles. I'm going to go with the Judon Noodles to easily take home the win in this one.
Very bold of you, Danny Football.
I'd also like to hold on, one more thing. I would like to point out. I almost forgot. This is a great point. I had the TNN, stats people crunch the numbers for the final definitive regular season TNN power rankings. Ham and Throw, 5th place.
So you're saying I should be better than what my actual standing was?
No, you should have been about 500.
League rigged against me, but despite that. So first off, I want to make note, you've talked a lot about the Calvin Ridley trade and stuff like that, but TNN never even reached out for comment. So, when the trade happened.
It wasn't very groundbreaking. You gotta do something to really move the needle to get asked for comment.
You're silencing members of the league, and it makes you really wonder what kind of biases are going on behind the scenes. That's all I'm gonna say.
The only bias at TNN is towards rewarding people who make bold, aggressive moves, and Ham and Throw as an organization is not going to do that, clearly.
Well, there's a difference between making bold and aggressive moves, which, Nooch did last year and Will did this year, and you saw where that got them. But I like to think that I was smart with my moves. I looked at my team. I looked, where's our biggest weakness? And I said, wide receiver 2, filling in that starting wide receiver 2 spot. And so I approached trades amongst the league. I said, I'm going to hold on to all my first round picks. I said, I would like to keep my second this year. And I want to get a guy that I can plug into my wide receiver 2 spot. Obviously, it's not going to be a star player. We're going to get someone that I think is playable, someone that can produce on any given week. And I think that fills the biggest hole without giving us our future, while also putting us in a better position to win this year or make something happen. I think I perfectly executed that. We made the playoffs by making smart decisions, not giving up the future. So no matter what happens, we still have 3 picks in the first round and a half next year, plus our first year after. It made it very difficult negotiating with people. And one person in our league, I'll leave them anonymous, got mad at me, actually, that I wouldn't give up a first and said, you're just trying to rip off everyone and win a trade by a mile. Of which case, I then proceeded to make a trade that I thought was fair. And then this person then came back to me and said, I see you found someone to let you win by a mile in a trade. So they clearly didn't like that. But yeah, I think Ridley's bound to go off. The trade's going to work out. Besides,
hasn't he been scoring like 6 points a week for the past couple weeks?
I think the first week on my team, he had a pretty good hot. But he's still getting all those targets. He's bound. I think maybe 2 weeks in a row that I think he's gotten tackled on the 1 yard line. that extra
Maybe if he was
yard,
good, he
he's
would have
looking
gotten
at
there.
double digits. Nah, he's I'm not really worried about Ridley. I really do think that he's bound to go off in the playoffs, and you guys are gonna look back and see that this was like the smartest trade that, could have been made.
I'm sure he will help you win that fifth place game.
So let's talk about a guy by the name of David Njoku. Ever heard of him?
Scarface, yeah.
Scarface slash Chill Bro. Yeah, so that
Yes.
dude, he's got a legit quarterback throwing to him now, a guy named Joe Flacco, and he loves feeding Njoku. I might have the tight end one going into this week, better than Travis Kelce on the other side of this matchup. And you pair that with a guy like Isaiah Likely, young guy, stud, getting a lot of targets, scored a big touchdown last week. I think I'm starting like a tight end U over at Team Ham and Throw. I think Kyron's a top 3 running back in fantasy football right now. He's in his second year. I don't even have Jonathan Taylor. So if I move forward in the playoff, when I move forward in the playoff, get him back, looking pretty good. Look at my defense right now. I honestly think low-key, something that hasn't been talked about in my team is that I have one of the best defenses in the league. Especially if you look at the linebackers. I think my quartet of linebackers, best in the league. And the weird thing about my team, which is, you'll point to those bad games I had. My defense loves to do well together, and they love to suck together. And so really, everything just comes down to defense because that's how the rules are rigged in this league.
True.
Is that offense doesn't matter. I don't even know why we waste all of our time doing all these things, because all that matters is that your defense got like 3 sacks and your guy threw up 20 something points and you have multiple of those guys and you win the week. Who cares what happened on offense?
True.
So yeah, we're gonna rely on that. If my defense does good, I don't think Timmy stands a chance. And I feel very good about my team heading forward into a team against Team Vanek. Which, when that happens, Tooch, I think if I was to tell you at the beginning of the year...
Who's Tooch? Tooch is not here.
Oh.
Commissioner is not here right now.
The commissioner is somewhere else. Sorry, you guys just look somewhat weirdly alike. Danny Football, if I was to tell you before this year that you'd be having a semifinal matchup between Ham and Throw and Team Vanek, I think you'd lose your mind.
You guys were by far the
simulation.
2 worst teams in the league last year. By far.
And look what happened. And look what happened when I win this week. I think I caught Jude on noodles at the perfect time. I think they limped to the playoffs. They haven't looked great. Because it's Friday, I can look at the fact that Devontae Adams put up 20 points and say, it doesn't even matter. I'm not even scared. It doesn't matter. I think, as you mentioned, he could be a fraud. We don't know. He kind of blew that first round by, and I think he's going to regret it by having to play hot Team Ham and Throw, who scored the second most points in the league last week. So all in all, I'll stop there. Ham and Throw by 1 million. Playoff run starts here. You're going to have to eat your words about everything you said about Ham and Throw with this playoff run. Break the league.
I look forward to seeing it. Finally, we have the Mental Brick Walls taking on the Tex Arcana Bandits. This one currently 50-50. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
This is another intriguing one. I think 2 teams that you could also make an argument are kind of limping towards the end. The Brick Walls, I think they've kind of been faltering. I think over the last 3 or 4 weeks, they really haven't put out a good performance, whatsoever. And you even saw it from management this week that they said they were going to lose by 1 million. They don't even have faith in their team. And it's kind of sad to see.
They haven't had faith in the team all year.
They have at all this year, but they're a playoff team. And I think, if they had a little bit of spark from ownership, a little more optimism, that might rally the guys to take on a team like the Bandits that have been kind of slow towards the end of the year, not looking so great. I think a lot of people might look at this matchup and say the Bandits are going to win by 1 million. Don't even look past it. I say I want ownership to be a little optimistic, rally the boys, and I think this game could be very, very close. Now looking at the Bandits, I saw Brian Robinson's out now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know about Justin Jefferson. I don't know if that's like a game time decision or whatever. Even if he plays, who knows how he's going to do. A lot of question marks. Team hasn't been performing well. Last time I checked, they're not even playing Trayvon Walker this week.
Oh, last I checked, they were.
Then maybe they changed it. We'll see. All I'm saying is if they don't put in their best player or what is supposed to be their best player, what does that say about the team? What does that say about ownership? What message does that send? And as a person who doesn't believe Trayvon Walker's good, I think that is a good decision. But from what ownership and others say about this guy, seems like a leader in the locker room, a guy the team rallies around. I think he's almost setting himself up for failure if he doesn't play this guy. With that being said, I think people are going to believe this will be a blowout. I think it's going to be close. I think if Brett came out with some positivity with his team, that could be enough to really put them over the edge. But because he's so negative, I think I'm going to give the slight edge to the Bandits. And even though I'm still in front of that train, stopping it with all of my force, I'm gonna choose them this week.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick here. Like you said, Brett's team has not been looking good basically the entire season. I think this is probably going to end up a really close match, probably the closest one of the week. These were two division leaders from last year who missed out on the bye due to teams that they drafted into their divisions. In Grayson's defense, he was stuck with the commissioner's team, the SWAT team, with the last pick. His hands were kind of tied there, but Brett came out and picked Team M Vanek confidently with that first overall pick. And he may be looking back on that with some regret now that Team M Vanek is looking pretty nice this year. Fans of the show, look, Wisconsin, I know you're a fan. Fans of the show will know that I'm high on the Bandits. And they have not been looking too hot as of late. I will admit that. I'm an impartial expert. I just call balls and strikes. The Bandits have not been looking too hot, but I'm still a very firm believer in this team. I know that some doubters around the league have been calling for Grayson to bench Trayvon Walker, saying that he is bad or extremely mid. But I'm glad to see that the Bandits, at least last time I checked, were sticking with their guy. I'm sure he's going to reward them with a huge game here in the playoffs. I'm seeing multi-sack game out of Trayvon Walker, and you can mark that down now. Multi-sack game incoming from Trayvon Walker here sometime in the playoffs.
If he benches him, it'll be
Now,
so funny. If it's on his bench, that'll be so funny.
that would be, but I know Grayson. He would never do that to Trayvon. He is the
All
heart and
right.
soul of that team. You can't bench him. For the Brick Walls, obviously not having Josh Jacobs this week, huge hit for their team, especially with how that game went last night. Could have been a really big game for Josh Jacobs. Probably would have gotten a lot of points for them. I'm also really looking out for Nico Collins and seeing if he plays this week. If he can't go, the Brick Walls are going to be in very rough shape. I know that Brett did not have too high of a view on his team when he came on earlier in the season. If you look at the TNN power ranking, this team, they're well behind the top four teams. They should have been exactly 700, which is, very impressive. They did exactly what they were supposed to. Still managed to squeak into the playoffs, but really did not look too good getting there. Needed a lot of help. Unfortunately for them, I think it's going to be an early exit. They're running into a Bandits train that may have slowed a little bit, but it's still chugging along. I'm staying on the Bandits train and I'm picking them to win this week. Well, Visconti, thank you so much for being on with me this week. It's been great having you on. I'm looking forward to redeeming myself, beating the guest, the expert. I always know best, but sometimes weird, fluky things happen where the guests beat me. So looking forward to proving that I'm still the best. It's been great having you on. Wishing you all the best of luck in the playoffs, and look forward to seeing you back here next year.
It's always a pleasure being on with you, Danny Football. I can't wait to be back here twice next year. Before I go, can I make a prediction on the championship? Is that
Oh
allowed?
yeah, I that was actually I was going to ask you predictions for championship and for the toilet bowl.
Obviously, I feel very strongly about my team, moving forward. And so clearly we're going to be the champions. And I think we're going to take down SWAT. So I'm going to go ham and throw over SWAT. I believe I chose SWAT to win it all last year, and I was correct in that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first time that SWAT has had a first round bye?
It is, yeah. First time that the SWAT team has won their division. So, a little unfamiliar territory for them.
I think that's where everything's going to go wrong. They're so used to not having the bye week and just using all the momentum they have. And now that they're going to be sitting at home this week watching, I think it's just bound for disaster. And I think this is finally the year that SWAT gets got. And I think Hammond throw is going to be the perfect justice for the league to get to the end and prove, the haters wrong, Danny Football wrong, Commissioner Tooch wrong, just everyone wrong, unless it's like the past years and the commissioner rigs it for whatever reasons, with the defensive rules and stuff. But we're going to pretend that won't happen, and Hammond throw will come out victorious.
I'm going to say this iteration of the SWAT team, Commissioner Tooch's team, is, I believe, the second most dominant team in league history, going off of the TNN power rankings, or if you played everybody every week. They should have won over 70% of the time this year. So if Hammond knocks them off, I would be very impressed.
Yeah. See, even if I don't win, I don't think SWAT's going to win. That's my big bold prediction. SWAT, everything goes in their favor this year, which means they're not going to win, because that's just how this league works.
Toilet bowl prediction before you head out.
I think it's just going to be the bottom two. I think it's going to be Coochie against Blood, Sweat, and Beers. And I think Blood, Sweat, and Beers did a great job at tanking this year, even though they were also really bad at tanking for a while, but it ended up working in their favor in the end. And I think there's, the perfect amount of being bad at tanking that they'll actually win when it matters most in the toilet bowl final. And I think Coochie Gang is coming home with the toilet bowl.
Wow. Worst of both worlds for Tom. Gets the toilet bowl and the 6th pick in the draft. That would be entertaining.
That would be awesome. Is that the first time that would happen in history?
I think so. I'll double check that, but I have to believe so.
Yeah, when it goes wrong, it all goes wrong.
And thank you, Danny Football and guest Visconti, for those great picks. That's all we have for you this time. Be sure to tune in next week to see how things shook out. I'm Danny Football, and this has been TNN.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell.